Have you ever wondered just how many Falcons were built to exactly the same specification as yours? Well, today I'm going to tell you how you can find out, and also we're going to see just how rare my BA Falcon Mark II XR6 Turbo is. Should be interesting, so stick around. Hey guys, and welcome back to MotoringBox. I'm Sean McKellar, and today I'm going to show you something rather special that you can get from Ford Australia if you own an Aussie-made Ford Falcon. You see, Ford Australia still keep records to this day of every single car they ever built, and what I've got in my hot little hand here is called a verification letter. This is something you can request for free from Ford Australia, and it'll tell you pretty much everything they have on file about your particular car. And I don't believe there's any other Australian manufacturer that offers this service. So how exactly do you get one of these? Well, let me tell you all about it. So to get one of these verification letters, you need to email Ford Australia's customer service team. And the email, I'll put it up on the screen, but it is foacust1@ford.com, Ford of Australia Customer Service. And in that email, you have to provide them your name, your address, your phone number, your email address, but also the VIN number on your car. Now, as far as I believe, that is all you need to provide them, but I have heard stories of some people needing to provide them with a copy of their driver's license, a copy of their registration, just so the team can confirm that you are indeed the registered owner of that particular car. I didn't need to provide those documents, so your mileage may vary. So you send it off, and within probably 2 or 3 weeks at the very most, you will get a PDF verification letter back giving you all the details on your car. So from what I can work out, Ford do have a lot of details still on file for pretty much every single car they've built. I believe if you go a little bit further back to maybe the 70s or the 60s, the information they have on file might not be as comprehensive as what I got back for my 2004 BA Falcon XR6 Turbo, but it certainly is an interesting task, and hey, it doesn't cost you anything. So now that you know how to get one of these for yourself, let's run through this verification letter I got back for my XR6 Turbo. So I'm going to hide all of the details on the sheet for now, but let's reveal them one by one and run through them. So they've got a little thank you for contacting Ford Australia, blah, blah, blah. And then we have a serial prefix, which is part of your VIN number. We've got a serial number, which is also part of your VIN number. And we've got an SIDO number. Now this is not really important. I believe it's to do with the way the car was allocated to a particular dealer. It's just a number they use to keep track of the stock or something like that. So it doesn't really matter. So next up, we've got the model code. So again, the code doesn't really mean much, but it is good to know that this is indeed a Mark II Falcon XR6 Turbo. If there's something written on here that doesn't match up with your car, well, there are some questions that need to be answered. If it just said XR6 and didn't even mention that it had a turbo motor, well, that would point to the fact that someone might have done an engine conversion on it. But it is good to know that this is indeed a legitimate XR6 Turbo. Next up, we have the engine code. And for the Barra 240T, Ford used the engine code of Y. So it's the 4-litre double overhead cam VCT turbo straight 6. So far, so good. Next up, we have our transmission code, M for manual, 6-speed. It's ticking all the boxes so far. All the BA Falcon Mark IIs came with the 6-speed manual, BA Mark Is came with the 5-speed. Next up, we have the paint code. This is of course Mercury Silver, paint code M7. It's on the ID plate, I already knew that already. But here is where things get a little bit interesting. Next up, we have the trim. So this is really the interior. It's the seats, it's the door cards, it's the interior style. So my particular car, I already knew it was optioned with sports leather seats. It was an option for a couple of extra $1,000 back in the day. BA Falcons originally had this sort of lightning or tire tread pattern on the seats. I'm not a really big fan of that. So I was really happy to find this particular car, which was optioned with the sports leather. It's got the leather outers, and then it has a sort of a bumpy suede inner part of the seats. And this next part is perhaps the most interesting aspect of this entire verification letter. It's the options that the car was optioned with when it was sold brand new. So the first one I've got is option 1T, which is not listed. So this is something you might come across on your verification letter as well. It is an option of some sort, but for whatever reason, Ford didn't really keep any information about what the hell it was. So I did do a search for BA Falcon option 1T. I didn't find any search results online about it. I found people with other codes that said not listed, 1X and 1Y and sort of things like that. but I couldn't find anyone talking about 1T, and I still don't really know what it is. So yeah, if you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments below, but I don't really have high hopes of ever finding out what that is. Next up, we've got option 53, which is an audio pep pack. Now, pep is kind of a word that means to add extra oomph or extra sort of excitement or something. So obviously the option is to do with audio, and if you have a look at the next one, option 54, the car does have premium sound. I knew that already. It's the colour ICC, it's a subwoofer in the parcel shelf. I don't know whether BA Falcons could come with the premium sound colour screen without the subwoofer. I'm not really sure, so maybe, if I had to guess, maybe 53 is to do with the subwoofer and 54 is to do with the colour ICC. Of course, with the 6-stacker in-dash CD player. So yeah, obviously those two codes are to do with the stereo. Not really much more to say about that. Now the next option sort of confused me for a couple of minutes because it says 5G grey thread. So when you think of thread, of course, the first thing I thought of were the seats. Now this has got leather seats, or partial leather. And I first thought maybe it's the colour of the thread between all of the leather segments, you know, the stitching that runs around the entire seat. But I've never seen any BA Falcons that have alternate colours of threads in that particular area. But then I finally understood what it was about. You see, this car being an XR6, it has the XR6 insignia stitched into the leather section of the upper part of the seat. And I have seen them available in different colours. I've seen some in yellow, I've seen some in blue, and surprise, surprise, mine are in grey. So that of course must have been an option you could specify back in the day. You could choose what colour stitching you had on your leather seats. And I'm really thankful that the original owner of this car went for grey, because I think it looks really subtle. And seeing as the car itself is grey too, I think it does match up superbly. The only other colour I would have liked probably would have been blue, because I'm a big fan of blue in general. It's my channel colour indeed as well. So that's actually all of the options this car came with. If we keep going down the sheet, the next one are the tyres. So this car has the 17-inch wheels. I think they're standard wheels, they're nothing fancy. 235/45 R17s, date of manufacturer December 2004, and the retail dealer Q Ford in Springwood. So I was able to find out some of that information from the owner's manual, but perhaps the most interesting thing for me on this sheet are the options, but also the table which is at the very bottom of this verification letter. See, this is where things get really interesting. What it does is it breaks down the amount of these cars that were built, but then the number progressively gets smaller and smaller once you factor in the build number, the engine, the transmission, the paint color, the trim, and the options. So let's run through that right now. Okay, so we've got our table down the bottom. It says that it's a Ford BA Mark II Falcon XR6 Turbo Sedan. No surprises there. Now the first thing we've got is the total build, 19,198. No surprises there, but the next thing confused me a little bit again. And you know, that's kind of the theme of this sheet. There are going to be some things on here that are a little bit confusing at first, but it says engine. So going back, it's the engine code Y, the Barra 240T. It says 2,761. So question there obviously is, if there were 19,198 Mark II Falcon XR6 Turbo sedans, how come only 2,761 had the turbo engine? So I've thought about this, and I think what's actually happening here is the 19,198, I reckon, are the standard BA Falcon Mark II XR6 sedans, not the turbo, just the XR6. So how do I reckon that is the case? Well, the Mark II Falcon range, right? It was built from October 2004 to October 2005. So it's a 1-year period, but it sort of does overlap into 2004 and it doesn't go the full way through 2005. But I was able to find how many sedans and wagons Ford Australia built in 2005. So again, it's not a perfect match of the time period, but it's probably about as close as we're going to get. So during the year 2005, Ford sold 53,080 sedans and wagons in the Falcon range. So that would have been BA Falcon Mark IIs up until October 2005, and then the final 2 months would have been BF Mark I. So really, if we sort of take that figure, 53,080 cars, I reckon it's probably pretty accurate that around 20,000 of those would have been the XR6 model. Because the XR6, you know, didn't cost a lot more money over the sort of BA XT. but you did get a much sportier looking car, and I do remember back in the day they were a really popular option. It sort of felt like you were seeing more XRs as opposed to the regular Falcon. So I'm going to interpret this sheet based on that sort of assumption. I reckon 19,198 XR6s, and then 2,761 of them were XR6 turbos. And I know that figure sounds really low, but this is really sort of a 1 year time period we're talking about. Perhaps Ford did only sell 2,761 turbocharged cars over the course of the Mark II range. And you know, there aren't any other engine codes for the 240T turbo, it's always a Y. So if there's only 2,761 cars with that engine code, we just have to trust it. It's already pretty rare considering that was 17 years ago. I wonder how many of these are left today. Now the next part about this car, which is also pretty rare, is it is a manual. So once we factor in the transmission, we're down to 1,032 cars. 1,032 XR6 turbos in manual from the BA Mark II range. Out of those 1,032 cars, only 98 were painted in the M7 Mercury Silver. So already that's pretty exciting. You know, 17 years ago, there were less than 100 of these built from the Mark II range. That's already pretty rare. And sort of 15 plus years later, I reckon surely it would be a fair assumption that less than half of those would still be remaining today. It could be a lot less when you see how many Barra turbos are ending up in other cars, engine conversions, and being sent off to the States and all that sort of thing. So 98 cars in the Mercury Silver Metallic. Once we factor in the trim, which is the optional sports leather seats, we are down to just 22 cars. 22 cars with the sports leather in Mercury Silver, with the manual, with the turbo engine. So I was getting pretty excited at this point. It's nice to know that, hey, there were only 22 cars that roughly look the same as mine from the outside, but also have the same interior. But we get to the last option on the table, which is vehicle with options. So this is going down the entire list, but also factoring in how many of these cars with the engine, with the transmission, with the paint, with the trim, also had the same options that this car was optioned with. So, bearing that in mind, the end number is 1. According to Ford, there is only one car made with this engine, with this transmission, with this paint, with this trim, and with these options. Now look, I don't know if you can trust this number 100%. It could be that 1T not listed option sort of throwing this off and saying that this car is a one-of-one build. Or it could be the grey thread. Maybe it's the only XR6 Turbo Mark II which had these options, this colour, but with the grey thread on the seats. I don't really know. But really, the thing to think about here is, even if you disregard that vehicle with options number, if you disregard that Ford Australia is saying this is a one-of-one car, if you just back it up a bit and go back to trim, there were only 22 of these cars built in the BA Mark II range that look identical to this one. And really, again, if you factor in the age of the car, 17 years, I reckon you'd be lucky if there were half of those still running on the road today. So if we just round it down to say 10, that's a pretty rare car, and I'm stoked, to be honest. And look, I know there are some questions to be asked here about how accurate this information is. I know the information here is accurate, but like, again, that option that is not listed, I don't know what that is. Is that skewing the figures when you get to the vehicle with options? I don't really know. But it is nice to know that there are probably only 10 of these cars, at most, floating around the country that are exactly the same as mine. So yeah, that is extremely surprising. I'm really thankful I did this. I am tempted to do the same with my NC Fairlane and also my AU Fairmont, just for shits and giggles. But I do sort of feel sorry for the team at Ford Australia, because after I publish this video, there's probably going to be thousands of you emailing them and requesting this verification letter. So it is awfully generous of them to provide this service to Ford owners for free. So I'd like to give a huge shout out to the team down there in Melbourne at Ford Australia. And also an apology for how many emails you're probably going to be getting from people requesting these letters. You guys really are champions, and I can't thank you enough. So yeah, that's it guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you've requested one of these in the past, let me know in the comments below. What sort of results did you get? Was there anything surprising on there? Was your car a one-of-one vehicle with options? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, throw me a like. I need all the help I can get. Check out some of the other videos. and I'll see you next time. I'm going to drive off in my one-of-one XR6 Turbo. See you next time.